What's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. In today's video, we're going to be talking about lands that you can play in Commander. This is part 7, pretty wild. So I will list in the description all the other parts just in case you want to check those out. I feel like if you had talked to me as a Magic player, like when I had first gotten into Commander and you were like, what are the things you care about as a Commander player? I'd be like, listen, I want to get Magic cards really cheap. I don't care what condition they are. I don't care if they're foil or non-foil. I want cheap Magic cards, and I want to play big, dumb creatures. That's what I want to do. And then if you ask me, right now, what are the things you care about in Magic? I like drawing cards, killing people's things, and I like a mana base that helps get me there. And that's basically who I am as a Magic player. You know, those, archetypal, Spike, Timmy, Tommy, whatever those things are. Did I say Timmy, Tommy? What? Oh my gosh, I don't know where that came from. I think it's Timmy. I don't know. Whatever those things are. I'm not those. That's me as a Magic player. I have my own category. It's Tracy, Jellyfish Queen. That's me. Okay. Let's chat about these lands. And I'm going to talk about 2 of them close together because they're very similar. So yeah, the first cards we're going to talk about Cabal Stronghold. We're also going to talk about Cabal Coffers. We're going to talk about Stronghold first though, because they are similar. And I think they're fine in their own right. They're just kind of a little bit different. We'll get into it. Okay, let's talk about Cabal Stronghold first. So here's my opinion about Cabal Stronghold is I think this card is actually good in a mono-colored black deck where you are running a lot of swamps. I have this card in Zombies, and I absolutely have gone off with this, and I've gotten a solid amount of mana from this card, and it's worked really well. I think if you're playing this in other decks, I don't know if it would quite work out the same way, unless you were splashing a color, but truthfully, where I think Cabal Stronghold shines is in that, you're running many swamps that are basic, and yeah, it's a monocolored deck. I just think that's where this card fits and this card belongs in that sort of base, and I do actually enjoy this card. Anything else, I think a lot of people are like, this card is bad and it's not as good as its predecessor. It's not as good as Cabal Coffers, is what people say. Again, I just think that they're a little bit different, but being so, let's talk about Cabal. But anyways, the kind of too long didn't read that version card is, I think if you build it in that deck, put it in that deck, I think it's fine. Anything else, it's probably not going to fit very well there. However, a card that can fit in decks where you're running multiple colors is Cabal Coffers. So Cabal Coffers is definitely a little bit expensive. She's a little expensive. However, this card is really awesome. Do I own this card? Do you ever sit there and wonder do I have this Magic card? Does anyone else do that? Please tell me that I'm not alone in this, because I think I do own this card. I think I have one in Zombies. Maybe I'm getting this confused with a different card. But anyways, this card's great. I'm thinking of Ancient Tomb. Why am I getting this and Ancient Tomb confused? They're not the same card. That was confusing. Anyways, I need a Cabal Coffers. Hopefully one day. It's just expensive, but for 2 mana you tap it and you add a black to your pool for each swamp you control. Note that it does not say basic, so realistically if you're playing this in, let's just say, a 2 mana deck where you have swamps, let's just say you have your shocklands, things like that have that swamp in there, this counts for that, which is really good. It's also 2 mana to do and tap, which is great. Yeah, this card's awesome. On my wish list for a minute. Maybe one day. Maybe. Okay, I actually talked about this card recently in a video, but here we are talking about it again. It's a great card, Thawing Glaciers. I did not realize that this card was on the reserve list. Some of you had told me that in the comments, which I really appreciate, so thank you for letting me know. This card is awesome. I feel like they're a little bit harder to come by because if I'm thinking about this correctly, I think this has only been printed 2 times. I think it's only been printed 2 or 3 times, so a little bit on the harder side to come by. It is a little bit more expensive. However, I think this card is really awesome. It does ETB tapped for 1, and you tap this card. You search your library for a basic land, you put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library, then you return this to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Now, some people might look at this and think, why would I want to bounce this to my hand? That doesn't seem very good. Where this fits best is in those decks that care about lands entering the battlefield. If you're not playing that, I don't think you need this card. But if you're playing like a deck that really cares about lands entering the battlefield, I think this card is so incredibly good in there. For example, I want this card in my Omnath deck because it just makes sense in that deck. It not only does it fetch lands, which is great, but on top of that, this bounces to the hand, which is why I think this card makes this incredibly strong, because it bounces to your hand and then you can play. You always have a land. It's also really great too if you have a way to play multiple lands in a turn. So let's just say you have like another basic in your hand or something like that. You can play both of these in the same turn, which is good. A little bit on like the slower kind of side, but again, I think this card is incredibly good. Wish it wasn't on the reserve list. Yeah. Okay, these are two cards that are very similar, so I'm going to talk about them kind of side by side. Prismatic Vista and Fabled Passage. And I'm going to be very real with y'all. I literally get these two cards confused, and I really can't tell them apart. Like, I literally have to read it, because I don't know what this card does. All I know is that they're good and they fetch me lands. I couldn't tell you what they do. If he was like, life or death, what does this card do? I couldn't tell you without reading it from the computer screen, because I get them confused. Prismatic Vista is just a land. You pay 1 life, you sack it to get a basic land. It enters the battlefield. It does not enter the battlefield tapped, which is great. And then you get shelf your library. I mean, like, this card's great. I feel like this is like, when I think like a card that you basically want in everything, like it's Prismatic Vista. Like, stock up, buy 5 for your commander decks. Like, this card's great. Modern Horizons 2, maybe? Anyone else hoping for Modern Horizons 2 this to be printed in there? Because I would be very excited if it was. Yeah, I like it. And then very similarly, in a very much similar vein, we have Fabled Passage. So you sack it, so you don't pay any life. You search your library for a basic, and you put it on the battlefield tapped. So that's kind of like the first part of this card. So very similar to Prismatic Vista. However, with Prismatic Vista, you're paying life. With this, you're not paying life, but the lands enter the battlefield tapped. With Prismatic Vista, it enters untapped. But if you control 4 or more lands, you get to untap that land, which is pretty cool. So I like both of these cards. I don't think it's like fair to say one is like better than the other. I just think they're different and they do different things. And I think the goal is probably if you're like one or the other. I just think they're both good, and I definitely want both. I actually need quite a few of both of these cards for decks because they're really good. So yeah. Cool. Okay, the next land I want to talk about is a card that I don't know if a lot of people know about this card. Isolated Watchtower. This card's awesome. So, I think also too, because I think this card was printed in like the Commander sets, like one of the, is that Commander 2016? I can't remember like the little logos. I can't tell them apart. There's too many. This card's great though. So I think sometimes those cards get like forgotten about and people like are like, what does that card do? You know, I just feel like a lot of people might not pay attention to those commander things. So anyways, this card's great. Enters colorless for 2, you scry 1, and then you can reveal the top card of your library. If it's a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped. You can only do this if an opponent controls at least 2 more lands than you. So this is kind of like if you're just really looking to churn out more lands, Isolated Watchtower is definitely the way to go. This card's really, really, really cool. I don't think this is like you should put this in every sort of deck, because again, if you're pumping out like a lot of lands, I don't think you need this card, because you can only activate it if an opponent controls 2 more lands than you. So I think I'd just be very careful about like where to put this, but in the right deck, I think this can do a lot of work. So cool. This card genuinely makes me laugh. Tournament Grounds. So I think why this card makes me laugh so much is because it's like they were printing like this card, right? And they're like, okay, we want to do like a tri-land that adds like Mardu colors into your pool. And then someone's like, great. And someone else is like, you know what? We need to do a little bit more than that. And someone's like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we don't just want like a regular Mardu land, because we already have the tri-lands. And it's like, we need to do something else with this card. And someone's like, you know what we should also do? Staple the word equipment onto it. And like, that is how this card was produced. I swear, I was in that executive meeting and that's exactly what transpired. This card is like this really weird like niche card that like probably 99% of Magic players will not know what this card does or will never play with it, because the circumstances in which you would run this card is such a slim number, because you got to think you're running either a night deck, but you're not just running a night deck that's like mono white or white and black. You have to run like Mardu Knights. Okay, that's fine. You do that. You'd run this card. And or you have to be running a Mardu equipment deck. I feel like I'm acting like I'm hating on this card. I'm really not. Those are the decks that you run it. Or option C is you run a Mardu Knight equipment deck, and you get the best of both worlds, because then this is a tri-land that doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. That's all I'm going to say on that. There we go. Cool. Krosan Verge. Love this card. I feel like I want more cards, lands, that give me more lands. Like, I feel like a lot of it is like you play a land and then it gives you one other land, like Fabled Passage and Prismatic Vista. And I like those cards, do not get me wrong, but I want more lands that like get me more. You know, I'm greedy. I want all the lands out of my deck, because at late stages of the game, do you think I want to be drawing lands? No, I want to be drawing value. I want to be drawing those cards that either draw me more cards or the cards that help me kill people. That's what I want to be drawing. And Krosan Verge is very good, and I really enjoy this card a lot. It does enter the battlefield tapped. For 2, you sack it, but you search for a forest and a plains. They do enter the battlefield tapped, but what I would just like to note is this does not say basic. So you are welcome to go and get whatever. Your fetches, your shocks, your duels, your whatever kind of lands that you want that are forests and a plains. This card is awesome. I love it. Why can't we get more cards like this? I want the whole line of Krosan Verges, but in different colors. Do those exist? Can anyone confirm or deny in a comment if the line of this card exists, where they're all like the colors or whatever? I feel like Krosan Verge is kind of like a one-off, but it shouldn't be, because this card is really great. I really think that we need to bring this as a full line. It's really cool. Okay. Next card we're going to talk about is Castle Ardenmail. First off, this art is super pretty. Oh, it's Volkan Baga. I don't know. I probably butchered that name, but they're one of my favorite artists. This card's awesome. ATB's tapped unless you control the planes. You add 1 white to your pool, whatever. The real thing here with this card is that for 4, you create a 1/1 human. And I feel like some people might be like, that's a lot of mana. But here's my thing. Is I feel like a lot of times when you look at a card like this, right? You know, it is a lot of mana, like it is 4 mana. However, it's a land, and the best time to have this type of card is when you have like nothing else going on, and you are like, you know what I really need right now? Like, I just need a 1/1 token. But it's not an instant, and it's not a sorcery, or it's not a creature in my hand that does it, it's a land. Because it also gives me mana. And that's the thing I think that people miss about a lot of these lands, is like, when the ability is a lot of mana for a land, they're like, whoa, that's like a lot. Like 3, 4, 5 mana to do that thing. And it's like, yeah, but you're getting the benefit of it being a land. Because if you don't have enough mana to do this, or you have other things going on, you can just tap it. And if you control planes, it doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, which is really cool. So I never feel like a lot of these cards, like there definitely are moments where I feel like a lot of lands, I don't think the value is quite worth it for that ability, but I think Castle Ardenvale is definitely one of those cards that's really good. I actually do need to pick one of these up. It's a very good card. Okay, last card. I can't believe I've never talked about this card in these videos. It's super wild to me that like I haven't, but Sanctum of Ugin. Maybe I'm getting this confused with Eye of Ugin. To be honest, Eldrazi is kind of just all really a blur for me. I tend to not be able to identify that. But it adds colors to your pool. When you cast a colorless spell with converted mana cost 7 or greater, sack it. And if you do, search library for a colorless card. Like if you are playing a colorless deck, you just get a Sanctum of Ugin. Like, why would you not? Why would you not? You play something big and dumb, and then you can sack it, and then you can get something. It's like a free tutor. And it's also a land. Kind of similar to what I was saying with Ardenmail, is that if you don't do anything with this, if let's just say you're playing this at early stages of the game, it's just a land, and you get to use it as a land. And then when you're done with that, you just sack it, and then you get a thing. You get a dumb, colorless thing to your hand at, like, no cost. Why would you not run this card? It's great. Okay. That is everything for talking about lands. I don't know if I have any of these other parts planned out, but there will definitely be more of these in the future because it's super fun to talk about lands, and I feel like, I don't know, just your mana base is, like, super important, and I don't know, I feel like some people don't pay attention to your mana base when it's a really important aspect of the game. So anyways, that's it for me, guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I'll catch you guys in my next one.